There is a genocide happening in Sudan. There is ethnic cleansing happening in Sudan.
They are trying to westernize the Sudanese. They're trying to change the Sudanese people.
Sudan is just another African country where there is another civil war occurring.
Okay, you're pressing buttons now.
The recent tweet I saw shocked me. Over 100 women, they burnt themselves alive.
I would posit it's more dangerous than Malta. It's not a chance I'll survive or won't survive.
They will get killed.
You're gonna get killed. Yeah, bro, my neighborhood looks like Gaza. I'm not joking when I saw videos of it.
Just ghost town.
Bullet holes everywhere, some buildings are destroyed.
So 5 million had to flee.
Black people, African people do get relegated when it comes to issues of importance around the world.
How many times have you actually been to Sudan? Because you're wearing the whole Sudanese get up. People will think that you came direct from Sudan for this podcast.
Well, I've been a lot, man. I've lived there, I went to school there. There was a time I was going there every year. There's a time I think I went more than once in a year. But yeah, I've lived in the UK longer.
If someone was to ask you where you're from, outside of Britain, so say you're in France or something, or Germany, and they ask you, where you from? Are you going to say, I'm from Britain or I'm from Sudan?
Depends. I mean, if it's like officials, border guards or something, I'll say Britain because...
White privilege or British privilege?
No, it's because what they're really asking is to assess whatever rights you have, I guess, in the country. So I'm came as a British citizen, like that. But yeah, if someone was to ask like where you're really from, I would say Sudan. Even though I'm half Sudanese, but I'm not in tune with my other half. Really. So yeah, I'd say Sudanese.
Okay. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to another episode of the MO where we discuss what the Ummah needs to hear, not just what we want to hear. And again, we are joined by Yusuf Abu Sinan, as you can see from the get up, from Sudan. He's lived there previously. He's gone to school in Sudan. And we wanted to actually debunk 5 myths about Sudan. Now, a lot of people don't even know there's a conflict happening in Sudan. The UN has been publishing some statistics regarding Sudan, where over 20 million people have either been displaced, are in poverty, or they are basically facing death, whether it's via the RSF or the army. And despite all of that, still no one talks about it. Still, most people don't even know it's actually happening. So going straight into it, myth number 1. Muslims don't care about Sudan because they are black.
They're not all black. I'm not black, but the majority are, and perhaps that's why people then assume. I mean, the name of the country, Sudan, is more or less the Black Land or the Land of the Blacks. That's the name, and that's an old name for a much bigger region between Egypt and Ethiopia that also stretches westward. So like Chad, Niger, all of that is also Sudan historically. But yeah, just like most Muslim countries, Sudan is very diverse. If you've seen Sudan on the map, you'll see there's a straight line between it and Egypt, and right angles between it and Libya.
They must have used the ruler.
Yeah, they had to, isn't it? The British Empire. So yeah, it crosses between essentially the same people.
So between the Egyptians and the Sudanese, because when you look at people who are from Egypt, they don't look black.
No, in the south of Egypt. In the south of Egypt,
they look Sudanese.
There's a lot of black people in the south of Egypt.
Oh,
the south of Egypt, north of Sudan, the local language is Nubian. Arabic is not the first language. On either side of the border, they speak the same language. Nubian people are generally speaking black, but it's the history of Islam and the spread of the Ummah and its mixing is you have different shades. There are Arab tribes who moved in the area. So my family are from an Arab tribe. But there are also Arab tribes who the majority of its people are black because over time they've mixed in with the population. But they can trace the ancestry farther by farther back to Arab tribes. And there's a lot of people who are not Arabs as well in Sudan. And Arabic is the second language, but Arabic is the official language of Sudan, so everyone speaks it. So yeah, it's very diverse. There's different shades of black, if you like, but yes, there are also white people, and there is also racism in Sudan as well against.
But do you think the wider Ummah disregards the situation in Sudan because because they're black?
Um, I think it's more to do with ignorance. Like, it's not the news cycle, isn't it?
It's true.
But there is a general. I think so. Actually, you know what? I'm not gonna say it because I think it's unfair. I can't back it up. But I think everyone kind of knows that black people, African people, do get relegated when it comes to issues of importance around the world. I don't think it's something that Muslims do deliberately, apart from a few who are nationalistic and racist, but that's not attributable to Islam itself.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's just what people have become accustomed to because everyone else is like that. There's a hierarchy in the world in terms of races that people have become accustomed to. So if when it does happen, I don't think it's of ill intent. It's subconscious. Um, I don't think honestly, I don't really think people Muslims. You ask them, no one's really gonna say that to you. You might even only become aware
Mm.
of that kind of bias if you ask them that question. Oh, is it because they're black? And no, of course not. But then how comes I haven't really thought about it before?
So what is it that you're saying that it's not in the news cycle?
It's not the news cycle.
Why?
I think mainly is that
But why is it not on the news cycle?
who gives you the news? That's the question. Who gives the news? There's no such thing as completely independent media.
Mm.
Every media output has its opinions, has its biases, has its way of prioritizing news. And the big corporations around the world are either privately owned by really rich people and they're connected to Zionists, or they are state owned. And state owned ones, obviously, then they will focus on what is relevant to whatever the state really wants to push. And the Zionist ones focus on what the Zionists want to push, isn't it? So,
But we saw with Palestine and Gaza that people were pushing this stuff out via Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, but we're not seeing the same thing in Sudan.
there's a few reasons to that, isn't it? I still wouldn't accept that the reason is because of there's ill intent regarding the Sudanese.
Mm.
The Palestinian issue has been going far longer, a lot longer. So more people know about it. This is sustained activism over a very long time, which is why it dominates social media.
But we're not seeing no videos though. We're seeing videos of every other conflict. But we're not
There's
seeing.
lots of videos. You just don't see it, maybe because you're not on like Arab Twitter. Or
Mm.
there are a few there are a few English speaking Sudanese activists now online who do share these videos. Obviously, there's only a few of them. So the volume of people talking about it is different to Palestine, but really Palestine's been there a lot far longer. So it's like exponential growth in terms of the awareness of
Yeah,
it.
but there should be some journalists there. They're seeing journalists in Gaza. They're still getting into Gaza. We're not seeing any journalists, English-speaking journalists in Sudan pushing this stuff out.
Recently there have been,
Oh yeah.
but very few. But yes, for a long time, there weren't
Why?
really any journalists because it's more dangerous. I would posit it's more dangerous in Gaza
What are you saying? Journalists will get
for journalists.
killed?
Yeah.
Bad.
So the danger in Gaza, and obviously in Gaza, the Israelis have killed far more journalists than like any other conflict, um, in at least let's say modern history, or since journalism became a proper profession. But the Israelis, their weapon of choice is airstrikes. It's firing from afar, from a safe location. So there's a chance of survival. And obviously, all the journalists there are very, very courageous, especially the Palestinian ones, who are taking that risk, obviously, by reporting, by being there. The thing is, in Sudan and let's say Khartoum, the capital city, because Sudan's a very big country and it's kind of underdeveloped. But if you in Khartoum, there's no excuse of there was no internet, there was no infrastructure, no media. So where there definitely is media is Khartoum. There definitely are journalists there. When the RSF, we'll introduce them in a bit. When the RSF came, they're on the ground. They're not firing from afar. They go street to street. They shoot people if they find them filming stuff. So yeah, it's the risk is almost certain there. As it's not risk you take. It's not a chance I'll survive or won't survive.
They will get killed.
You're gonna get killed.
Look, I can understand why people don't give much importance because people see the whole of Africa in a state of war, which brings us to myth 2. Sudan is just another African country where there is another civil war occurring, and it's a power grab between two factions.
Okay, you're pressing buttons now. You're pressing a lot of buttons. But I forgive you. I forgive you
Why?
because of the ignorance. Listen, if you just another conflict. Now I understand why people might say that because of what you just said earlier. There's just this image people have of just it's just a place of conflict. Yeah, but it's different when you receive that kind of statement and it's your family that became refugees. It's your home that was looted. Um, or in the case of other people, this hasn't happened to us, alhamdulillah, but in the case of other people, someone was killed or someone was dishonored.
So your house is gone.
One of the women in the family was dishonored.
Your house got looted.
Yeah, my house was looted. Yeah, the family home was looted by the RSF. Um, so yeah, I forgive you, but just saying it's just another one. It really simplifies it. Makes it look like people are just uncivilized. They're just fighting all the time. Like there's no reason for what's going on, and it kind of ignores um the dynamics that are going on. Like give you an example. Yeah, if I was just to say the American Civil War or the English Civil War or something like that, I'll be like, yeah, it's just the people are like that. They're just always fighting over each other, isn't it?
Americans will get offended.
Yeah, because they'll be like, no, it's not like that. The American Civil War was about like what America is constitutionally, the rights of the states versus the federal government. There's something bigger there. It's not people just fighting for like because they're just I don't know greedy or power hungry like that. And yeah, the English Civil War was kind of similar in terms of parliament versus the monarchy. And
So people who know Sudan though, Khartoum is obviously the main hub. What's Khartoum like right now? Because you've had family there, right? Yeah.
yeah,
So what's it like now?
Khartoum was a city of 7 million or above,
Mm.
and it's depopulated. I mean, last time there was some sort of fact-finding mission to gather data. I think it was below 2 million people,
2 million.
but I'm pretty sure it's less than that.
SubhanAllah.
Um,
So 5 million had to flee.
yeah, fled or died. The numbers of displaced, officially numbers of displaced, is I think 11 million. That's UN numbers.
So give us an idea, is because right now we're thinking, look, a city as big as 7 million, similar to London,
Yeah.
yeah? And you're saying that there's only 2 million people left. What's happening in Khartoum? Because when you're saying 5 million have left, I'm thinking it's a deserted place now. It's literally like a ghost town. What you saw videos of Iraq or something.
Yeah, bro, my neighborhood looks like Gaza.
SubhanAllah.
I'm not joking when I saw videos of it. It actually initially I thought it was Gaza. Then I saw like the caption on it. I thought, sometimes people put this stuff. They put videos from other places and see other stuff happening. But then as I was watching it, I did recognize the place.
SubhanAllah.
Just
ghost town.
Ghost town, bullet holes everywhere. Some buildings are destroyed, rubble across, and
so these rebels are coming in and they just. I have this picture in my head.
So we need to introduce them for things to make sense. Yeah. So the war that's going on right now in Sudan started April 2023, and it was by the paramilitary. So paramilitary is part of the armed forces in origin, but it's semi-institutionalized. They have some free reign.
Okay.
Like Bengalis would be familiar with the RAB. It's similar to the RAB. The paramilitary is called the RSF.
These are what they call the rebels in some media outlets.
Yes. Or they mean the other rebels, because Sudan has other rebels. So let's talk about the RSF. This is the current conflict. So the RSF Rapid Support Forces is led by a man named Hemeti, and they essentially broke off from the Sudanese Armed Forces, also known as SAF, or just the army. I'm just going to say the army because it's easier that way. And the conflict started in Khartoum, in the capital city, between the soldiers who were there, a garrison station in different parts of the city, and then it spread to other parts of the country. So in Khartoum, there was fighting between these two
factions.
Yeah, armed factions.
Mm.
And yeah, so there were a lot of people in the beginning who were dying as collateral damage because there was fighting would just erupt in random streets and then people would get shot at by accident. Then the army started using airstrikes, supposed to be precision strikes, but obviously they killed civilians. The RSF brought heavy artillery into the city, so they were firing shells. But to be honest, those initial few weeks, that's what it was like. But then it became very clear that the RSF was deliberately targeting civilians.
Yeah, but the recent tweet I saw shocked me, and it's not a normal conflict. When I saw the tweet that over 100 women, they burnt themselves alive because they were in fear of the RSF coming.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming that the RSF are raping women.
Yeah.
Like, that's not a normal conflict. That's, especially for the Muslim world, that's not normal. From your own people.
Right. So the other dynamic here is the RSF used to be called Janjaweed, Jinni ala Jawad. It's a jinn on on horseback. That's what it meant. They were created in order to strike fear in people who rebelled against the old regime. And their place of operation was Darfur, which is in the west of the country. So their whole MO, modus operandi, not the Muslim opinion, the whole MO was burn down villages, kill all the men, rape the women, take the livestock,
To instill fear.
instill fear, destroy anyone who raised their head against the old regime.
Mm.
But it was also an tribalistic, ethnic militia. I won't call it a militia. So militia and army from now on, yeah. RSF militia and the army. So the militia and the army. Because they were recruited from one specific Arab tribe. So the free reign they got and the weapons they got from the central government, they used against their local rivals.
This is
Old regime.
2003, Darfur.
It started in 2003. Yeah, yeah. So all this time, that's how they've been behaving in Darfur anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And to earlier point, the cameras, the better internet connection, that's in Khartoum. So what they've been doing in Darfur for decades is basically what they are doing now in Khartoum. That's why you're seeing it. And there's more people obviously with smartphones and more videos going around. Now a lot of these videos and news pieces are not coming out from Khartoum anymore because lots of people left Khartoum. But there are people who are from Khartoum originally who are documenting these things because they still have their phones with them, for example. But it's across the country.
This is unique. This is a very,
For the Muslim world, it is.
yeah, because your own people don't do this to you normally. Like, we're seeing some of the stuff that,
But this is the thing. The RSF, the militia don't look at you as your own people. They don't. You're not one of their tribe. You're not one of them.
SubhanAllah. But going back to this conflict between the army and the militia, the RSF, the militia, and the army SAF. But the question I always think about when there's like a civil war is, okay, the army, I understand they get their weapons from obviously the treasury. Where is the paramilitary? Where is this militia, RSF? Where are they getting their money from?
Yeah, so obviously they are,
because they're going in. I've seen some of the weapons they have. It's not homemade weapons.
Yeah, so obviously they have an arsenal from before because they were part of the military in the first place. But yeah, they are paramilitary, so they are lighter armed than the and they're supposed to be faster. They're rapid, and smaller than the armed forces. And I really hate this phrase, civil war. Really, yeah. But answering this question will explain why. After the war began, who's continuing to fund them? They don't have control of like factories, and even when they did take over factories, they can't run them. Yeah, they can't produce ammunition and stuff like that. So they have foreign backers. The main backer, financially and militarily, for the militia is the UAE, the United Arab Emirates, and a lot of the gear you may have been seeing is Emirati gear, which probably wasn't made in the UAE, bought from the USA originally, but that's a separate point. So really, it's not a civil war, and you can find a lot of these activists say they stop calling it civil war because it makes it look like the country was divided over something. Yeah, but it's not. It's really the military institution that broke from within itself and is fighting each other. But one side is deliberately going on a rampage, almost ethnic cleansing, against normal people in Sudan. So it's not a civil war, really. It's a proxy war. The RSF are doing something for a foreign power,
So myth number 3, the ethnic cleansing that is occurring in Sudan right now is actually about the UAE extracting gold from the region.
No, but there is a truth to that as well. So no, the war isn't about this because the UAE has been getting gold from Sudan before. The UAE is getting most of Sudan's gold, 98% I think or something like that, Sudan's export of gold before the war anyway, right? So they didn't have to start this war for the sake of getting the gold which they were getting anyway. Hemeti, the militia guys, they already had like a monopoly almost of the gold mines, so they were selling that stuff or smuggling that stuff, whatever you want to call it, to the UAE before. So that's not really the cause. But there is a ring of truth in terms of like the ethnic cleansing. The RSF have been engaging in ethnic cleansing, if you like, even before this war, and not just for their own like local tribal gains or the divide and conquer strategy of the previous regime, but they were commissioned on many occasions to evict locals from land that was given as concessions by the central government, the old regime, to foreign companies, mining operations for some French companies masquerading as Moroccan, or Russian, or Chinese, or the UAE. The UAE did that in Darfur just before the war began. The after the visit of an Emirati official to an area where there are gold deposits, straight after he left, the RSF came in and burned the village down over there and forced people to flee.
Yeah. But why is the UAE now funding the RSF then, if it isn't about commodities like gold?
So this is a different question now because how they benefit is different to why this war began and what it's about. So yes, they do benefit with the gold, and they have a good relationship with the RSF militia from even before. They were the ones fighting for the Emiratis in Yemen instead of Emirati soldiers. But the war is bigger than that. The UAE is one of many foreign powers that are embroiled in supporting one of these two sides in this proxy war. The UAE gets an extra bonus in terms of the gold anyway, but what they get out of this war doesn't have to be economic gain.
So, but the UAE is involved in this country, and normally we associate a foreign power coming into a country with getting some economic benefit, like what we call colonialism.
Yes, so what I was trying to get to is that colonialism, I guess, is really what we're coming to. It doesn't have to be for economic gain. Traditional colonialism, yes, it was kind of in your face like that, but you don't have to be a consumer to benefit from it, is really what I'm trying to say. You could be involved for a strategic reason, that you want to get control over something, influence something, a country, a people, to use it for something else.
Like America controls the trade routes.
Yeah, America doesn't need to consume the oil, does not really consume the oil of Arab countries, but it controls who it goes to, yeah, and the prices of it. So it's kind of like that. So when you look at this war, because economically they were getting the gold anyway, the real question is the UAE and the other foreign powers, what game are they playing that might be actually bigger than economics? And when you look at it that way, the UAE kind of drops to like a second tier of foreign powers meddling in Sudan, because it is almost like they are consumers, yes, but like they're doing heavy lifting. And in terms of strategic gains, there's bigger players. And this is where we're going to have to end up talking about the revolution prior to this, because that is now what will explain how, in addition to the UAE, there is Saudi Arabia, there is Egypt, there's Ethiopia, there's like the African organization like the African Union, IGAD, a few others. But there's international players like the UN, of course, like the European Union, like the UK, like the USA. And then you get a different picture actually as to what really is going on. What's this war really about, as opposed to what is the UAE consuming from this war? Yeah, and
So-
then when you look at it like that, then you actually understand why the UAE is doing this, even though they were getting gold anyway before.
There's a lot of people involved in Sudan. They are treating it as a colony. A lot of people are benefiting from Sudan in terms of resources, namely the UAE. But it's not actually about that. That's what you're saying. You're saying that there's a lot of countries involved, but not about extracting resources. It might be cultural influence. It might be political influence. It might be intellectual influence.
Yes, because colonialism is the subjugation of another people, not annexing them, assimilating them, for example, not conquering them. It's just subjugating them to exploit them for something else, It could be financial gain, it could be economic resource, but it could also be cultural, it could be political, it could be diplomatic, it could be military as well.
Which, you know, naturally we're going to have to talk about the revolution to understand this now, which brings us to myth 4.
Okay.
Myth number 4. The revolution was the people revolting against the Sharia.
No. The Sudanese government, Bashir was the president before. Yeah, that's old regime. Remember this name, Bashir, and his successor now is called Burhan, head of the army. The guy, one of the 2 villains in the war right now. Bashir never implemented Sharia. He implemented some parts of the Sharia, and this was by his own admission anyway. He called the Sharia madaghmasa, diluted Sharia, like when you dip in a biscuit or cake rusk. Gargush, Sudanese love cake rusk. When you dip that in, that bit which is diluted now, it's not like that's what he called that bit. That's Islam. The Islam that he had, the Sharia that he had, it was that a nationalistic, ethnic, tribalistic, capitalist system with some Islamic rules. A lot of Islamic rules, to be fair to them, but again, it was just some Islamic rules as opposed to an actual Islamic system. People revolted against that hybrid mishmash that messed up the economy. People revolted against the injustice that was occurring, like the other Arab countries. Yeah, that's what people revolted against.
So, the revolution, it happened because of the economic situation, you're saying, that Omar Bashir caused with his policies, his wishy-washy version of Sharia. And in actual fact, the people are very close to Islam.
Yeah.
So, this revolution happened because pretty much Bashir in an economic situation. What happened after?
So Bashir was taken down because of the pressure that was on the army from the people.
Mm.
The army moved into a secure location, like what happened in Bangladesh with Hasina. She was saved by the army, really. Bashir was the same. He was saved by his colleagues from a bad end, from a Gaddafi kind of end or something like that, or a coup. The way the people were able to put that pressure is because they were organized very well by those secular parties, but they had a front. They created a different group, professionals association, and that was a front. That's who people were interfacing with. So, and they always maintained neutrality. So people didn't see who was behind; they saw them first. And that's the game they played. They used to say "taskut bas," which means just let it fall. Well, we'll think later on about what happens afterwards, but right now we just need to unite over this government going down. Now, once Bashir was gone, and the army is under severe pressure to let go of power, and this is the thing they did not want to, and the people behind them didn't want them to let go, yeah, because there was foreign powers involved. But they had to acquiesce to something. So those parties used the people as leverage in negotiations to get in a foot in the door, power sharing agreement, and until the army gave them something, they were going to keep the streets, on fire, keep the people on edge, keep the people out there on the streets.
So
but if they got into government, then they'll send people home. Yeah,
so
that
they
was
made an agreement with the political parties that they're going to have a power sharing agreement with the military, yeah?
Yeah.
So half military rule, half civilian rule.
Yeah. And whenever the negotiations broke down, because these guys were obviously pushing their luck, if you like, because they had the people on their side, the leverage, the army would say, "Oh, fine, let's just do elections then." And that's when these guys would turn around, because the last thing these guys want is elections, even though they're supposed to be the secular parties, the democratic ones, because elections means they will lose. They know they will lose. The Islamic parties win in the elections. Yeah. So even now they're still avoiding elections. They keep talking about transition, but transition where they are appointed by whom? By whom? And this is the key thing: by foreign powers.
It has to be, because if the people are Islamic, the people want Islamic Sharia. But then you have political parties calling for liberal policies. Then the question comes is, who's actually backing these political parties? You're saying this foreign powers, who? How are they getting involved? Because
so in all those,
you don't see
in those negotiating meetings between, it wasn't like just the army and these politicians sitting and talking. It was in the presence of foreign diplomats.
They were sitting there.
Yeah, they were
so
sitting
white people, basically.
Yeah. Oh, in addition to the other ones, like the Ethiopians and the African Union guy, who was, I think, Mauritanian, the British ambassador, who was a Pakistani British, yeah, British Pakistani.
They had to put a brown person in.
Bro, he led some of the protesters in Salah. They prayed together, yeah. But those meetings, and even the ones that came after, because it broke down and they had to start again and stuff like that, it really boiled down to 4 countries being there and dictating what they were talking about. And it was the USA, UK, UAE, Saudi Arabia. These are the 4 most important countries. And in order of influence, not economic gain consumption, influence in terms of politics, influence in terms of writing the new constitution or transition, influence over deciding the structure of the government, USA, UK, UAE, Saudi. USA, UK are top 2. So when you look at it like that, and this is a chain of events you're looking at right now, a chain of events that's, you could say started from the revolution, but I could even go further back in terms of the American sanctions on Sudan that were designed in order to cause a revolution in Sudan. Through down to this war that's going on right now, these are all connected events, where the foreign powers are trying to re-engineer what Sudanese state, what Sudanese society, what Sudanese people and their culture is. Yeah. So the colonialism primarily being played by the USA and the UK is a cultural, political one. Yeah, which is they are trying to westernize the Sudanese. They're trying to change the Sudanese people. And immediately after the revolution, when these weak individuals succumbing to foreign powers are not that the previous regime was good, because they also were backed by foreign powers, but they were given some sort of dignity. Yeah. Army and civilian, I'm talking right now. Yeah. Immediately normalize relations with the Israelis. Immediately apologize to the USA for something they didn't do, Osama bin Laden did, and not even when he was in Sudan when he did it, which was attack an American battleship off the coast of Yemen, where it shouldn't have been anyway. But again, it wasn't something Sudan did, and they paid reparations to the Americans. Introduce a new national women's football team. Like that's like the most important thing right now for
you can
Sudan.
see Western influence. This is this form of colonialism that you were talking about. It's not.
And what it creates, this is a point that was strategically, they're not consuming anything from Sudan, but they will create a country, a society that's so docile and enslaved that they can be used for other things later on, willingly.
Yeah. Colonial slaves, like a colony. So just quickly, how did the revolution then lead to the war?
After the people served their purpose and were no longer useful for the political parties who are now in government, the political scene shifted from people versus regime to parties versus army within amongst themselves. So then there it was all politicking, making sure our guys in this department kick those guys out, and it was all, I'm 100% sure, it was at the advice and the consulting of these foreign powers. The UK on one side, the USA on the other side. You need experience for that. These are the experienced players. The USA on the army side and the UK on the party side. Yeah, Burhan, Hamdok, if you want to remember the names. Hemeti RSF is on this side at the moment. Now, the political scene shifted from the parties versus the army to the army versus the army. Does that make sense? Yeah. So what the foreign powers did, the ones who are on this side, is they shifted the whole scene from where the people had some input into it to only their guys had an input into it, which is the army on one side and the army on the other side. Those guys have their own ambitions, by the way. For the USA, they can back both sides. What's important is one of their guys will win.
So we understand why the revolution happened. We understand how the revolution led to the current conflict now. There is a genocide happening in Sudan. There is ethnic cleansing happening in Sudan. But there's a genocide and ethnic cleansing happening in Gaza right now. Myth number 5. Gaza is more important than Sudan.
Okay, yeah, I've heard that a lot. And I've heard that a lot actually from people who try to downplay, from Muslims who try to downplay what's going on in Sudan by saying, oh, but Sudan is just Muslims fighting Muslims, and even if they accept it's a proxy war, and it's the foreign powers really fighting each other through their little warlords, the army on one side and the militia on the other side. But at the end of the day, whatever local ambitions these guys have, it's a war between those guys amongst themselves, between Britain and America, or competition. Let's say for them, it's not really a war; it's competition. Whereas in Palestine, it's very clear it's Muslims versus Kuffar. Yeah, so that takes precedence. Or because Palestine obviously has Al-Aqsa, that makes it more important. And the first thing I would say on this is there's a famous hadith from Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam where he mentions that the blood of a Muslim, as well as other things, but the blood of a Muslim is more sacred in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala than the Kaaba itself and the surroundings. And the Kaaba is the most holiest place for the Muslims. It is more sacred than Al-Quds. So there's a paradigm shift, a conceptual change we need to have, which is, yes, of course, the Haram in Mecca, Medina, and Al-Quds, we will give our lives to defend it, and the Palestinians have been giving their lives to defend it. But the blood of a Muslim is still more sacred. So then you have to still look at the Sudan situation and say there's Muslim blood is being spilled by the foreign powers, and Muslim blood is being spilled in Palestine by the same foreign powers. I'll explain how, and the same in Kashmir and other places. So when you have that paradigm shift, then the second thing you need to realize is it is the same struggle. It's the same struggle because it's the same enemy. In Palestine, the conflict is against a Western American colony that was set up there. A colony which is like, the all 13 colonies, like the USA itself, or Australia, where the foreigner themselves have settled there, And in Sudan, the conflict, again, the subject, the target is the Sudanese people. It is the Muslims there. They're the ones who are being attacked by the RSF militia in their homes, And the army is being deliberately paralyzed by its leadership in order to let this happen. And the reason for that is because they serve the same foreign powers. There's no foreigner doing the fighting, but the foreigner controls those who are making decisions. So it's still the same struggle, which is we want liberation from the imperialism or the subjugation that is being imposed upon us by the US empire. So it is actually the same struggle.
And this is the important point that people have to remember, that there is that common enemy. There is that colonial master still treating us as puppets. And we forget that sometimes. We see the enemy in front of us, whether it's in Sudan, where we might think the enemy is the RSF or the SAF, the army. Where, for instance, in Gaza, we think just the enemy is in front of us, the Israelis' defense forces. But it's this common enemy that is controlling everything that is happening in the world, that has its influence, that has got its dirty fingers involved in every situation. Name any bad situation, any conflict happening, and you will see the US involved in that situation. And that Muslims have to acknowledge. We can't move away from this point. We can't sleep on it.
The style of the war is different. I'll accept that. The style of the war is different because in Palestine it is a military conflict. First grade military conflict with the USA. I'm saying because the USA is the one arming the Israelis. It is the aircraft carrier, isn't it?
Yeah.
For them. Whereas in Sudan, it's a war of narratives. It's a war of public opinion. It's a war of ideas. It's changing the people there. That's the real aim of it. And the way you engage this war is you have to understand what those narratives are. You have to become aware of how they're trying to change the way you think, and that's what you need to fight on. So you just said something which, it could be a sixth myth actually, the both siding or the equating of the RSF militia and the army and the SAF. So, for sake of brevity and summary, for someone who doesn't know about Sudan, you might explain like that. These are the two sides fighting, and they are, and this one's bad and this one's bad, but when you're trying to understand what the American game is, for which the UAE provides support, and they're part of that game, and the UK is like a healthy competitor in that game, then you'll see actually the story of, well, the army's bad, the militia's bad, actually serves the purpose of what the Americans are trying to achieve, because the army is an institution that recruits from the people. Its job is to protect the people. The problem with the army is there's a corrupt leadership that's run the country to the ground, yes, and right now they're not doing their job. But there's a hierarchy. That's how the army works. The RSF is deliberately attacking people. They're not the same. The ethnic cleansing is done by the RSF. Even in the past, in Darfur and other areas, the army was definitely involved. Burhan himself was involved. Burhan was field commander in Darfur, yeah? So he supervised and oversaw the ethnic cleansing done by the RSF. That's not the whole army, yeah? And it's those leaderships that's the problem. Those leaderships are the ones who serve the foreign powers. They're the ones who make us look like, oh, we can't deal with this. So the RSF, well, I guess they're doing that, and we can't do anything about it. They're the ones who are creating the result is what? The result is dejection. The result is depression. The result is giving into that feeling of, Yani, Ya Allah, make this stop. Whoever runs the country, I don't care. Whoever wins, I don't care. Or please, just Burhan, if you just take over the country, let the army win, yeah. And now you've just reset everything. You've reset everything. The people had come out and thrown away a very powerful, decades-old regime. They were on the cusp of independence from the foreign interference. And now you've socially engineered them back over these atrocities to accept one of two who are both backed by America.
So bringing it to a close, the MO, the Muslim opinion, from these 5 myths, what is it?
We need to clear the fog of war. When there is war, things become foggy. The truth is lost. And this is what the Americans are using. So we need to first understand that colonialism is not what we think it is, or not what it used to be. It's not just about resources, the consumption of resources. It is more than that. It is the subjugation of another people to exploit them. But the exploitation doesn't have to be this. It could be something else. And in Sudan, it is cultural and political primarily. There's a military aspect right now, but that's the game played by the Americans to create this fog. We need independence, actual independence, not just, a shiny constitution, new flag, and a national anthem. You actually make decisions for yourself, where you actually represent your own culture, your own heritage, your own ideology, your own way of life, yeah, your own deen, and not following that of another. In other words, Sudan needs to be liberated. It needs to remove the foreign interference. The diplomats have to go, all of them. The agents within the army, I'm calling them agents, the agents within the army, RSF, the politicians especially, they have to be denied access to power, whether that is as in commanding power in the army, or actually just a microphone for a politician, for example. They have to be denied access to that. We need to create a clean environment where we actually establish a new state, not a new government, a new state in Sudan that is actually an Islamic state, not a Shari'ah of Umar Bashir diluted, an actual Islamic state. When we actually achieve that, we actually become independent for the first time because we've actually broken the cultural colonialism. We've broken the political colonialism. All right, the military colonialism ended a long time ago. Fine. We break the economic colonialism. Yeah, we actually start fresh. Then we can open diplomatic channels again. Obviously, that's halal, but it has to be strictly diplomatic. These guys can't be like going around the country and creating relationships with different actors and sparking rebellions whenever they want to. We do that in Sudan. We create impetus for change in Egypt, for example. We help the Egyptians remove Sisi. We unite the Nile Valley. We are unstoppable now. Palestine is ours. We have to liberate Palestine as well. Liberation is breaking out of the American empire.
And so until we remove foreign influence in our land, we won't be successful. We won't be liberated.
Absolutely. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not allow us to remain subjugated like this. It's not allowed for us in the first place. So you can't expect to do well if Allah doesn't allow us. He subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَن يَجْعَلَ اللَّهُ لِلْكَافِرِينَ عَلَى الْمُؤْمِنِينَ سَبِيلًا. Allah will not permit for the non-believers to have a way, i.e. power, authority over the believers. So it's not allowed for us to be in this situation. So we have to break out of it. I can't expect things to go well for us if we keep begging for their support.
No. On that note, that ayah just summarizes it all. We have to get to a position of authority over the disbelievers.
We have to do it ourselves. This is the key point. Not seeking the Americans to help us, put sanctions on someone here, someone there. We have to do it ourselves. We have to clean up our own army, secure our own country, unite our own ummah, liberate our own land.
Now, Jazakallah khair, debunking these myths and has helped us understand what's happening in Sudan and understand what's actually behind the conflict. Essentially, it's the stranglehold that the foreign powers, the colonial powers, have over the Muslim world, have over our ummah. Same thing that's happening in Gaza. But the difference now is that the ummah is awakening. The ummah is seeing these things and they're sharing it. We've seen what's happening in Gaza. We need the same thing to happen in Sudan. We need people to spread awareness about this issue so we can move towards liberation. We can move towards a position of strength where we're in control of our own political destiny. And finally, we need you to like, comment, and subscribe. And any questions you have, please put it in the comment section. Jazakallah khair for watching. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.